So welcome to this week's problem set, which is problem set number 4, and where we will deal with the topic of tax incidence. So in particular, we will ask us questions about who is actually carrying the tax burden in an economic sense if there are changes with respect to a tax schedule. And as we will see, there will be a difference between who is basically paying the tax to the government, so in a physical way, which would be the statutory incidence, and who is actually carrying the burden of the tax, so the economic incidence of a tax. Yeah, and as we will see, the economic incidence will depend on the elasticities of the demand and supply function. So which side of the market reacts stronger or weaker to changes in taxes or changes in prices due to tax increases. So in question number 1, we start with an example like this. So we have a market for rutabagas, and the demand for rutabagas is given by 2000 minus 300 times P. And then we have a supply for rutabagas, and it's given by minus 100 plus 100 times P. And the question is, who bears the statutory incidence of a $2 per unit tax on the sale of rutabagas, and who bears the economic incidence of this tax? So basically the question is, who is in a physical way paying the tax to the government, and the other question is, who is actually carrying the burden of the tax, so the economic incidence. Okay, so let us get started. Let us first collect all the information that we have. So we have demand, which is Q equal to 2000 minus 300 times P. We have supply, which is Q equal to minus 100 plus 100 times P. Then we have a unit tax of $2 on sales. So keep in mind that this example is taken from the US, and in the US, when you go to buy something in the supermarket, typically you have a price there shown to you which does not include the tax. Okay, so the sticker price, this is the so-called sticker price, does not include the tax, and you pay the tax once you are at the cashier and buy the actual product. Yeah, so in particular, what happens is that the consumer is having the statutory incidence of this tax, at least in the US. In Germany, it's different. In Germany, we have the 19% tax or 17% tax, which is the Mehrwertsteuer and Lebensmittelsteuer. And yeah, those are, so the statutory incidence here is by the seller of the product. Yeah, so there is a difference here. But here for this exercise, the statutory incidence is carried by the consumers, so the buyers. So statutory incidence is carried by buyers. And it's put into parentheses, at least in US. Okay, and then the economic incidence. Economic incidence will depend on elasticities. So it will depend on how strong the demand and the supply side of the market react to changes in the price due to an increase. So change in price due to an increase in taxes. Okay, what we need to do in order to find out about the economic incidence is we need to find out what the equilibrium equilibrium values of prices and quantities are with and without taxes. And by that, we can find out easily who is carrying the economic incidence of the tax increase. Okay, so let us start without a tax. So without tax, so in order to find out the equilibrium price, we simply set demand and supply equal to each other and solve it for the price. And by this, we find out what the equilibrium price is. Okay, so let's do the following. 2000 minus 300 times P. This should be equal to minus 100 plus 100 times P. And solving this gives you an equilibrium price equal to $5.25. Let me rewrite this. So $5.25. And this is kind of the situation without taxes. Yeah. So if you don't have any taxes, the equilibrium price is given by $5.25, and you can find out about the equilibrium quantity in this market by simply substituting this equilibrium price into either the demand or the supply. Okay, now let us consider the situation with the tax. So with tax, the price paid by consumers increases by $2. Okay, so that's what's happening if you have a sale tax in the US. So when a consumer buys a unit of the product, he does not pay the sticker price, but he pays the sticker price in addition to the $2 that we have here due to the tax increase. So then what changes is that the demand function will change slightly. So we won't have 300 times P, but we will have 300 times P plus 2. Yes, so P is now basically the sticker price, and then the $2 of taxes comes on top, and then this should be equal to 100 times P minus 100. And if you solve this, what you end up with is a price such that, so a new equilibrium price, let's call it, can call it star here as well, doesn't matter. So the new equilibrium price is $3.75. And yeah, as you can see, there is a change in the sticker price. And the reason is simply because the increase in taxes had an effect on the demand side of the market in that it decreased the demand in the market. And as a consequence of this decrease, the sticker price will decrease, because if demand goes down, the sticker price will go down. Yeah, because there is less demand compared to a situation without the tax. Yeah, and you have to, for finding out what the economic incidence is, so who is carrying or who's bearing the economic incidence of this tax increase, you need to find out how strong the sides of the markets are reacting. And this is basically now covered or included in this new sticker price. And yeah, what we can now calculate is the tax burden of each of the participants in the markets. Yeah, so consumers' tax burden is calculated in the following way. Consumers' tax burden. So the tax burden of the consumer, so how much of this tax increase of $2 is kind of carried by the consumers, can be calculated in the following way. So you have the post-tax price, minus, let me write this below so I don't have to, it looks a little bit nicer. So post-tax price minus Pre-tax price. Okay, so we have the post-tax price, so the price which we have, so the sticker price which we have if there are taxes, minus the pre-tax price, so the price that we would have if there wouldn't be any tax increase. And to this we add the tax payment by consumers. And if we now include, like substitute the numbers, so the post-tax price, so equilibrium price when we have a sale tax is 3.75. The pre-tax price is, this is what we calculated before, it's $5.25, so 5.25. And the tax payment by consumers is $2 because they bear the statutory incidence of the tax. And if you calculate this, you have 0.5, so 50 cents basically. So this is the tax burden of the consumers. So the economic incidence, uh, part of the economic incidence basically. So from the $2 increase, the consumers end up basically paying 50 cent more, yeah, as they had before. Yeah, so they don't pay, like if you consider the changes with respect to demand, the consumers don't end up paying $2 more, but they end up paying only 50 cents more compared to a situation without the tax. Now we can calculate the producer's tax burden. So producer tax burden. And this is given by the following. So there we take the pre-tax price. So pre-tax price minus the post-tax price plus the tax payments by producers. If we enter the values which we know, we have the pre-tax price, which is $5.25 minus the post-tax price, which is $3.75 plus the tax payments by producers. Now, this is equal to zero because there is no statutory incidence by the producers or the sellers. Therefore, the tax payments of them is equal to zero. And what we end up with, if we calculated this, is $1.50. Yeah, and then what you can see is that the producers have kind of the tax burden of the producers is larger than the tax burden of the consumers. Okay, so tax burden of producers is larger than tax burden of buyers. So buyers bear 50 cents of tax increase and sellers bear $1.50 of tax increase. So the answer then is that the producer or producers bear a larger share of the tax burden. Yeah, and here you can see clearly the difference between the economic and the statutory incidence, in that even though the consumers are physically paying for the tax, the $2, who ends like the side of the market who ends up paying the biggest paying this tax actually, like when considering economic changes, are the producers, yeah, because they basically pay they get $1.50 less compared to a situation where we had no taxes, whereas the consumers end up paying only 50 cents more compared to the situation before when we consider the taxes which we introduce. Yeah, so even though the statutory incidence falls on the consumers, the producers are paying for most part of the economic incidence. So we can say that the producers are bearing the economic incidence of this tax. Okay, this brings us to exercise number 2. So the demand for football tickets is Q equal to 360 minus 10 times P, and the supply of football tickets is Q equal to 20 times P. Calculate the gross price paid by consumers after a per ticket tax of $4. Calculate the after-tax price received by the ticket sellers. Okay, so here it's important that it doesn't matter whether we add this tax to the price which is paid by the consumers, or we subtract it from the price that the sellers can keep for each unit which they sell. Yep, so it doesn't matter for the calculations that we're going to make. So what we will do is we will add this per ticket tax on the consumer side. So the consumers do not pay only $10 for each ticket. So the demand curve on the of the so the demand curve representing the consumer side will change by adding $4 to the 10, which is multiplied by the price in this market. So the demand function, including tax, is given by 360 minus 10 times P plus 4. And now we need to set this equal to the supply. So 360 minus 10 times P plus 4 should be equal to the supply side. So the supply curve remains unchanged. So it's 20 times P. And if you solve this, you end up with an equilibrium price of $10.67. So, sorry, this is wrong. I mislooked my solutions. So if you solve this 300, wait, let me go step for step. I think that's easier. So yeah, if you rearrange this equality, what you end up with is 320 should be equal to 30 times P. And then if you solve this, you get an equilibrium price. Okay, so it was correct, yes. So $10.67. So this is the base price in this market. And now the price paid by consumers, so the gross price, would be $10.67 plus the taxes which the consumers need to pay, so $4. And this gives us $14.67, which is paid by consumers. Yeah, so this is the price that the consumer pays when buying one ticket. In addition, producers producers keep $14.67 minus $4, so they keep $10.67 for each unit of a ticket that they're selling. Yeah, so this is quite simple. So the calculations here, and what we can do as well is we can compare the situation here with a situation if there wouldn't be any tax. So without taxes, then we simply set the demand, the original demand, equal to the supply. So this should be equal to 20 times P. And if you solve this, you get P star is equal to $12. Therefore, if there wouldn't be any tax, the consumers would end up paying $12 and the producers would receive $12. Now, if we have a tax, the consumers would end up paying $14.67 and the producers would keep $10.67. Okay, this brings us to question number 3. So in question number 3, we're relating the elasticities of the supply and demand side for the first time to actually the burden of the taxes. So before we were quite silent about how elasticities actually affect the burden of a tax. And now we will kind of relate those two concepts to each other. So the elasticity of demand for maracas is -2 and the elasticity of supply is 3. How much will the price of maracas change with a per unit tax of $2? Who bears the larger burden of the tax, consumers or producers? So what you can immediately see is that if the elasticity of demand is here -2 and the elasticity of supply is 3, what you can already say is that if you compare the absolute values, so you take the positive value of -2, so you compare 2 with the absolute value of 3, which is 3, then you can see that the supply side is reacting stronger to changes in prices compared to the demand side. Yeah, so you would say that the supply side is more elastic than the demand side. And as you will see, this will basically have an impact on yeah, who is ending up to bear most of the taxes or the larger burden of the taxes. Okay, so the elasticity of supply has a higher absolute value than demand. So the elasticity of demand. So even before calculations, we know the consumers will bear the greater burden. And the reason is simply, I explained it before. So the consumer side, so the demand side, does not react as strongly as the supply side to changes in the prices. Therefore, if you introduce a tax, the demand side cannot react as strongly as the supply side, and a consequence of this will be that the consumers will bear a larger burden of the tax. So what we need now is we need formulas, which I think that you saw them in the lecture. So let us start by the following. So if a tax is imposed on consumers, the change in price which we'll call delta P, is equal to the following. So it's the elasticity of demand divided by the elasticity of demand. So we'll just copy this real quick. Minus the elasticity of supply sorry, it's the other way around. Should be the elasticity. So in the denominator, it should be the elasticity of supply minus the elasticity of demand times the tax. So the amount of taxes. And we have all the values that we need here to calculate this. Let me also put this into parentheses here. So delta P is then equal to, elasticity of demand is minus 2 divided by 3 minus, in parentheses, minus 2 times 2. And this is equal to minus 4 divided by 5. And then the net of tax price paid by consumers is the original price minus 80 cents. So 80 cents because that's 4/5 of a dollar. Yeah, so and therefore the total price increase paid by the consumers is $1.20. Yeah, so this is basically um, this is basically a signal that from the $2 that the tax like is actually so that the tax is equal to $2, so the per unit tax, and the consumers end up paying $1.20, so more compared to the situation before. So the consumers pay $1.20. This means that the producers will pay 80 cents of the tax increase. So they carry 80 cents of the economic incidence, whereas the consumers carry $1.20 of the economic incidence. And the consequence then is that the consumers basically end up bearing more than the producers when it comes to the economic incidence. Yeah. So as you can see, this is also a way to calculate the economic incidence of the participants of the market, because all we used was basically elasticities, as you saw up here. So we only used elasticities to come up with this conclusion here. And this should show you that, yeah, elasticities play a crucial role in determining who is ending up to bear kind of the economic incidence of a tax increase.